welcome to that one time we read manga podcast where we four friends decided to start reading manga together and talking about it. My name is Tim, and fun fact for me this week, I've never seen the movie Alabama Jones.
Hey everybody, my name is Duncan. I haven't heard of that movie before, but I'm interested, so I'm going to go look that up later. That's my
All right. Nice. All right.
Nice.
Hey everybody. I'm John, and my fun fact for the day is that I, after this episode, don't know what the heart of the cards are.
I'm Nate, and my fun fact is that it was his grandfather's heart inside of the card the entire time.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. And it was called Rosebud.
Oh no.
Oh yes. All right, well, yeah, if you couldn't tell from that, those last couple of facts, the Alabama Jones thing has nothing to do with it.
It has everything to do with it, actually.
The Heart of the Cards thing, if you couldn't tell from that, we read, John actually had us read chapters 1 through 29 of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga, not the 5Ds or anything else, just the original Yu-Gi-Oh. The whole point was because it was short and it was supposed to be sweet. Fellas, I'm going to start us off by saying I didn't think it was that sweet.
It sucked.
Nor did I think it was that short.
It was not great.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I knew going into it that it was going to be a darker take. I knew that it was going to be different. I'd heard plenty of things on every...
And I was on board for that.
Yeah, I'd heard plenty of things, and I was expecting, you know what, like, all right, this could be better than the show, like, because the show is, you know, it's a TV show about somebody playing a card game, and sometimes bad things happen.
Important to reference, too, the only show, I don't know, like, I'm sure there's more, but the only show I really remember watching was the 4Kids dub. The 4Kids show of Yu-Gi-Oh!
They really took it over for a really long time, and I don't know who's in charge of it right now, but yeah. And that was the baseline, and everybody loved it for the most part until you become, I don't know, 13 or 14. But yeah.
Or 25.
I mean, yeah, I don't know, but it's... Wow. I thought it was going to be way better than the show, and holy shit. We have some things to talk about.
It was certainly different from the show, which admittedly probably kind of ruined it for me. Let's go around the room, though, and get everyone else's, like, we all kind of jumped in on that there, but so that's John's take. Duncan, anything special to say other than just agreeing with the room?
It was nothing like the show. Like, maybe one of the small portions, like one chapter, and a couple of the characters, and I guess like the kind of overarching Shadow Games idea. Otherwise, yeah, I agree with the room that it was pretty something
those
else.
Those of us who are familiar with the show can agree that this was a complete different take, probably not in a good way. Which, granted, though, I believe this came first, so the show really adapted from this.
I feel like this had to have come first, and I don't know that for sure, but it only makes sense that this came first, and then marketing took over.
Yeah. So the point I was going to get to is for those of us who are familiar with the show, the original Duel Monsters Yu-Gi-Oh show that got everyone involved, it's very different. But Nate, I think you have an even more jarring.
Yeah, I suppose my fun fact should have been that I've never even like seen the show other than in passing. I've played the card game like once or twice before, and well, I know one thing for sure: 4Kids didn't air what I just read.
Yeah,
very true.
Yeah, that was it's entirely different, and we're definitely going to dive into that a little bit. And I think this one warrants the first edition of us voting at the end of the episode whether or not we're going to continue this adventure. But who knows? Maybe some hearts and minds will be changed after this episode.
Yeah, maybe after we absolutely destroy it, murder it, bury it, we go, you know what? It wasn't that bad.
Who knows? Who knows?
So yeah, I don't know, John, if you want to kick us off with if you have any opening questions. Otherwise, we'll just kind of dive into what we saw.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions that I already thought of. Because, I mean, there are some goods and some bads. I mean, mostly bads, but, I mean, I want to explore everything to it. But to give a quick recap for anybody that may be wondering where the manga starts and why we're saying that it's so different and it's such an abomination. So, with the understanding that everything, like the manga most likely came first, anybody feel free to fact check me on that, but it is an entirely different dynamic than what we all saw growing up and what we understand about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Children's card game. Like, the show is very much based on, like, yeah, there's a little bit of Shadow Realms implications. There's a little bit of a serious side in there, but in the end, it's like, who's the best at playing this card game? And whereas the manga is, my oh my, it's very different. The card game is kind of this is just so far, chapters 1 through 29, like, we haven't even made it to like the island of Duelist or whatever it is. Like, we haven't made it that far as the manga goes, but like the children's card game is kind of afterthought in the manga. And in the end, I think that all the things that happened and then sprinkling in the card game from time to time, I kind of feel like the show adaptation kind of ruined what this manga could have been. All that to say, that's my summation. That's my summary of it right there. And then I'll get into questions after you, Tim.
Well, I was just going to say I was fact checking while you were talking, and the manga began serialization in September of '96, and the show started in 2000.
Okay,
but both ended in 2004.
That checks out.
The show and the manga both ended in 2004.
Well, that's got to only be the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series.
Yeah, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters ended in 2004. The ones that myself, Duncan, and John grew up with. Like, whatever happened after Yugi Moto stopped being the main protagonist is completely different than anything we're talking about. We're talking the one, it's Yugi Moto, the main character, his best friend Joey. The anime calls him Joey, but his manga name's like Jonuichi,
Joichi or something like that.
Joichi, and then Tristan is Honda. I actually don't even remember the chick's name.
Taya.
No, that's a different girl.
Taya
Yes,
is Anzu.
Her name is like Anzu.
This is weird because I only know the manga names, and now you guys know different names of them.
Yeah.
The only one that's even moderately close is Joey's, because it starts with J-O.
The only name they didn't change was the Kaiba brothers. Seto Kaiba and Mokuba Kaiba. Their names stay exactly the same from show to manga.
Yeah.
Which is even weirder, because those are actual Japanese... I mean, I don't know. Yugi's name doesn't change either.
Yeah.
But it was just... It is jarring, but yeah, it kind of makes sense that it all ended in 2004 for this serialization. And I mean, you know, the manga went on and started doing other things that the other shows come from.
Is there any other version of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime besides what?
I don't.
I think that's necessary to be fact checked, but I think 4Kids did take it for the longest time. I don't know who's in charge of it right now.
They had the Pokemon Indigo Plateau, the original Pokemon, the original Yu-Gi-Oh, not the original, but the original Digimon. Like, 4Kids had everything. They had One Piece for a while. We talked about in the previous episode. 4Kids was like a big deal because it got these, you know, Japanese cartoons into the eyes of American children, and it worked. I mean, look at us. Show of hands, who still plays Pokemon to this day because they saw the show when they were 10.
My hands up.
Well, I mean, in my defense, Pokemon started getting popular when I lived in Okinawa, Japan. So I was kind of like in the right place to be exposed to it.
I mean, yeah, but so were we in America. Like, it was immediately shoved down our throats.
That's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4Kids had a stranglehold on anything that could be marketed towards kids, and Yu-Gi-Oh well, they did what they could with it. I was really going into this, so yeah, let me get to what I actually thought. I was going into this strictly thinking that, like, okay, I remember the show, I remember how it started. They're, card games, and Seto Kaiba and Yugi have a duel, and his grandpa gets trapped, and he goes to Duel Monsters Island to fight Pegasus, who's a weirdo, rich pervert who has a Millennium Eye, and then this Egyptian dude shows. I was thinking of that, not let's go to high school every day with these kids and see what happens. Like,
yeah,
it was just like you could take the card game out of all of it, and the show would still be more interesting than whatever the fuck was going on in this. This was literally just a monster of the day, monster of the week. Every day is a new conflict, and then they don't talk about the conflict in the next episode. Like, they reference it, but they never are like, boy, remember when that guy almost killed us last week? No, me neither.
So, coming from my point of view, since you guys have saw the anime, I'm reading this and I'm going, okay, so when do we get the cards? Because pretty much everyone's going like, you know what? You're a dickhead. I'm going to fight you to the friggin' death. And everyone just goes, yeah, sure. I won't walk away from that.
Yeah, like, why would I walk away from that? This 12-year-old said he's going to kill me.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot to dive into with that. And I like the way you put that, Nate. I mean, I'm going to fight you to the death for every instance.
You hurt my friend. I'm going to kill you.
Not to blend over episodes too much, but we just recorded our latest One Piece episode, and we mentioned, a storyline that where nobody is off limits is a good storyline. I don't think that exactly reflects this one, but, like, this is a storyline where, like, everything is a matter of life and death, but not in a good way.
No.
Yeah,
it's pretty one-sided in terms of stakes.
Oh, entirely. But it's wow. We have an episode coming up for damn sure. I guess so. My first question to everybody is. And we've kind of already gone over it, but I kind of want to go around the board and ask, like, what are your overall thoughts or impressions about the chapters that we read, the very beginning of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga? We can start with Duncan, then go around to Tim and Nate.
I mean, based on what we've already said, it's a lot of, like, this is totally different from the anime, and it's not exactly all that great. It's a lot of kind of like the same plot over and over after each chapter, with pretty minimal world building, pretty minimal character building. At one point we learned that Taya, I don't remember her manga name.
Anzu.
Anzu. We learned that she has a job, but that doesn't really, like, they'll reference it every once in a while as, like, a part of speech that doesn't rate a bubble. It's just kind of like background speech where she'll be like, oh, well, I can go. I don't have work today. That's pretty much the only character building that happens over the entire first couple chapters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have a job. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone else pretty much stays exact. Well, I mean, after Joey and Tristan become Yugi's friends, then they just stay as friends. But that all happens within the first, two or three chapters.
You mean Junoichi and Honda?
Yes, Junoichi and Honda.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you start throwing Tristan and Joey around, we're going to get confused.
I apologize.
I'm going to get confused.
My default knowledge of those guys, especially after...
One of the four of us will be confused.
Especially after having watched so much Yu-Gi-Oh! By 4Kids, and then so much Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged on YouTube. It's hard for me to imagine those two characters with any other name.
Yeah, honestly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged is more Yu-Gi-Oh! Than this.
Yeah.
And that doesn't do... Like, it's not like Dragon Ball Abridged, where it's almost a line-for-line, like, rendition of the show. It jump cuts different scenes. It cuts so much stuff. Those episodes are, like, 5 minutes long, 8 minutes long?
Yeah.
They gotta be, yeah.
Yeah, that's more Yu-Gi-Oh! Than what we just read, but I'll wait for my turn.
I mean, I think you're going into it right now.
My biggest complaint through this whole thing was, yes, my exposure to the show and the IRL card game kind of tainted my experience with this. B, there was very little of the card game actually in the manga. There was, or at least this version of the manga. I'm sure the other ones focus more on the card game, and maybe this one does later. I don't know, but it had like 1 or 2 duel monster like moments.
Yeah.
One of them was very early on, which is the iconic duel between Seto Kaiba and Yugi, which was completely different than the show.
Entirely, yeah.
It's wild.
They're just sitting at
but
a table.
Yeah, so there was very little duel monsters in this Duel Monsters manga. And again, this came out first. It probably wasn't his intention, and I'm being tainted by the show. But there were so many games. Every chapter there was a new game. There was Duel Monsters, and there was Capsule Monsters, and there was like digital pets like Tamagotchis, which isn't really a game. It's just a thing you do. But speaking of things not being games, this alter Yugi, whatever, the spirit living in his Millennium Puzzle that he solves, just straight up ices dudes. It's just like, oh yeah, I spilled alcohol over you, and you know, and then I lit this lighter, and then I dropped it, and I win.
Wait,
what?
There's a whole panel dedicated to watching this man burn alive.
Yeah, and it's like he just straight up ices dudes half the time, and not even games. Like, there's a point too where he's like saving his friend who dresses up like a Zombire superhero or something.
Yeah,
which also Zombire, fucking stupid name, zombie vampire. Get the fuck
Oh no,
out
it's
of here.
great. Come on.
No, I don't. I thought it was tacky and cheap, but he like is running away from the people beating them up with spray paint. He's like spraying the ground. And they're like, ha, we have you cornered now. He's like, not so fast. I sprayed spray paint on the ground. And they're like, yeah, so? And he goes, your lit cigarette's about to be the fuse. And I'm like, okay, what's the game? Do they have a chance to save themselves? Nope, they just burn alive.
yeah.
That's it.
And I think that in itself would be, and we can get more into it, but like I think that in itself is a good premise for a sadistic manga or show, like, but it's the exposure to Yu-Gi-Oh as it was shown on 4Kids for so long, like on TV, like that has kind of ruined this experience. Because I mean, if you told me I was going to read a manga today about like a guy with an alter ego and his alter ego is a ravenous murderer, but he's somehow just like morally justified person, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds really fucking cool. But then somehow it ties back to a card game.
And I think, and again, for me, you and Duncan, that is what it is. But for Nate, who has not watched the show, that is clearly not what made this one.
Yeah,
bad.
no,
Yeah.
it's not at all to me. I guess I'll jump into my part. Is that, first of all, sick Air Jordans on on Yugi.
Yes.
But
Gotta get that
yeah,
marketing.
they're awesome. No. But I think my problem with it was, okay, we got the alter ego that comes out of the Millennium Puzzle. Super cool. When that started to get expanded on, that was my most interested time. But like, when you're reading a chapter, and I literally would start it and go, okay, who's going to be mildly a dickhead to this kid? And then he tries to ice them. Like, like, because it was the same formula over and over. And I wasn't even thinking about the card until I was like, oh yeah, there's the Blue Eyes White Dragon. I forgot that this turns into a card game later. And
Yeah.
like, I think my favorite punishment that he ever dealt to someone was he made someone so that everything they saw was mosaic. So,
Oh my god, yeah, the TV.
yeah,
guy.
and when everything was just like censored and blocked out, I'm like, oh no, his vision, everything's now censored dicks. Like, this poor dude sees dicks forever.
He'll just see dicks forever. He will never be able to tell.
But yeah, I'm not really. I know that the show is well loved, but I couldn't get anything out of this. I just felt like there was no depth to the story other than that one specific time where we're like, okay, there's Millennium items. If you just
the dude,
like, imagine if they just went from there. Imagine if people were just like, this story's cool, let's build on these Millennium items, and the card game was never a thing. Like, it could have gone that way. I could see it, but it didn't. It didn't at all. Instead, we have the Kaiba Boys.
Okay, you got that reference down.
Yeah, you know the Kaiba Boys. I love those chapters when they uncover the Egyptian thing, and then the Egyptian guy shows up to punish the people who dug it up. But he has the Millennium Puzzle. He has the Millennium Scales and the Millennium Key that lets him like into people's souls. And he's like exploring Yugi's other soul. First off, he's like, oh, this kid has two souls. One of them is this ancient, powerful thing, and then literally there's 2 chapters dedicated to that. And then the next chapter is, let's go play at the arcade.
Yeah.
Just like, what? How do you come back from that? I just don't get it.
It could have gone a completely different route because of that. That's how I felt. Is I was like, man, this could really go crazy after this. And then instead of turning into the Pillar Man, it turned into the arcade.
Yeah, exactly. We could have had some awesome JoJo Part 3 Egyptian adventures, but instead we're playing with digital pets trying to eat each other and going to the arcade and putting scorpions in shoes. I don't know.
I'm thinking like kind of trying to put myself into that mindset of a first-time reader, kind of like you are, Nate. Like, you have a limited exposure to what the show was. Like, obviously, like, you knew of the card game and everything as you were growing up and stuff, but like, if I'm putting myself into the mindset of a first-time reader, during these chapters, I am probably so turned off just for the simple fact of, like, I have no clue what's going on with this story. Like, there's no linear... It's almost like there's no linear timeline. It's like just a series of events that happen, and sometimes things get kind of serious.
The storytelling to me... Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to compare it to... It's like a sitcom. It's like The Simpsons.
It is like a sitcom. You're right.
It is, yeah.
Things happen, and then they're resolved, and then more things happen next time.
Yeah, the storytelling to me, actually, it's... I was just going to say a more brutal version of that was... It felt like if you were riding in a race car that just kept slamming on the brakes, because it would go from 0 to 100 real quick, and then you would just be back to square one like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would always get excited when I would see a part 1, because, like, on the chapter title, part 1, because I'm like, okay, good. This means this is going somewhere. But then halfway through that chapter, it'd be like, this isn't going anywhere. How do you have 2 parts of
yeah,
this?
I don't know.
Yeah, like, I think the first time a part 1 and part 2 were introduced, what was it, like, The American Hero or something? Where that kid would, like, to dress up as a superhero, and he got, like...
Yeah, with the spray paint.
Yeah.
That wasn't the first time, no, because the Egyptian guy was a part 1, part 2.
I think that was after that. Okay.
Yeah, that was a part 1, part 2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got that all wrong. But talk about a waste of an arc. The American Hero, that was one of those examples where I was literally just not entertained at all. Like,
I don't care about this shitty superhero that they made up. I don't care that this kid's obsessed with him. And I don't care that he dresses up like him and thinks he can beat up bad guys because his dad paid him to.
Yeah.
Or paid the bad guys to take the fall. And then they obviously turn on him because what father does that?
Hey, I did my diligence and prepared and read everything in here, not knowing what I was getting into. But those were the 2 chapters where I was like, fucking kill me. And I just kind of like sped read through all of that. I was like, this is so dull.
I think that's where I sped read too.
Yeah, it lost me around there. And again, that's where I got the spray paint thing. Like, he just spray paints the ground so a cigarette will ignite the paint. And I'm thinking, like, okay, what's the game? And they're like... Nope,
the game is I light them on fire.
The game is called I light you on fire.
I made a list of the things that that Yugi uses on people. He's got chloroform, explosives, taser, a lighter, and a knife.
Yeah. And a children's card game.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, the only time it's like, at least when it was like the duel monsters, or he faced, like when he was doing the duel with Kaiba, Seto Kaiba, and won, and it's like, okay, now you experience death in the Shadow Realm. Like, that was like, okay, yes, we're getting in it. And then, like, we didn't do anything with that. And then later it was like, oh, we're playing Capsule Monsters with Mokuba, the younger brother, who's a master at this one instead of Duel Monsters. And I'm like, okay, well, I can get behind this. I get the premise. We do it once, and we move on. And he kind of wins by bullshit. So, is he good at games, or does he just exploit the rules?
Yeah, he definitely, he's a smart individual that exploits the rules, but he also kind of controls the narrative with it. Yeah.
I'd say.
He's usually the one setting up the rules of like, hey, if you move one more finger, I'm going to light you on fire, and then he does it anyway.
Yeah, right.
And I want to hit a quick sidebar on that, because you mentioned Mokuba a couple times, and that makes me think, but like, wow, the illustration in here and the drawing of the actual characters as opposed to like the anime itself, like, did anybody else get the vibe that like a lot of the characters are like maniacal psychopaths, like just Psycho the rapist, like Yugi's grandpa when he was introduced, like he looked constantly like he was gonna harass Taya or Anzu, and like Mokuba, he looked like he was like Chucky. He was gonna fucking kill somebody. Like, it was just insane, the art style that was used in this.
I mean, they look pretty crazy in the anime, too.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the grandpa. He looked
like a reasonable kid. Yeah, I mean, the grandpa, I mean, that's the biggest thing that I'm going to anchor on. Like, I'm looking at a picture of him right now, and it's like, he looks like a gambling addict that also rapes on the side.
Nate, you said you had a note about something?
Oh, yeah, I have a note that I wrote, because in the beginning of this, I felt like it was every single chapter we read. There was something where Jonoichi was just being a sexual predator. And I'm like, are we just reading this dude's, like, hideous biography? Like, this seems like some true crime shit. Because he was just, like, always peeking on people and trying to, like, watch porn constantly. I'm like, what's going on? This goes into a card game?
Yeah. Oh my god, and then, do you guys remember when they tried to make us feel bad for Junoichi by introducing his alcoholic father? Just for one panel. Mm-hmm. Like, so the chapter is Junoichi doesn't show up to school, so Honda, Anzu, and Yugi are worried about him, so they go home looking for him. They get into his home, and as soon as they open the door, a fucking liquor bottle smashes against the door. And he's like, is that you little brat? You haven't been home for 2 days. And then they just leave. And Yugi looks at Han, he's like, oh my god, he lives there? And he goes, yeah, that's why he doesn't have people over. All right, let's go.
Yeah, they just
like,
kind of...
What? We just gloss over this
totally
dude who clearly has an alcoholic, abusive father. He probably killed his mom. Like, oh my god. It's just normal day.
To support how dull most of this experience was, it took me until about 20 seconds ago to realize what you were talking about. I didn't remember until you explained almost the entire scene, and then I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing that happened.
I needed to recount it from my recollection because I need to make sure it actually happened, because it's literally that quick.
Yeah, it's like a page or two.
I think it's more like 1 or 2 panels, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh my god, he lives there? Yeah, that's why he never has people over. All right, let's go check out another place.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude, yeah, I was just... The one time you could have, like, dove a little bit more into a character's backstory, maybe gave us a reason to fucking care about this guy, other than just power of friendship, which, you know, our last One Piece episode we were worried was going to be a thing. This manga absolutely beats you over the fucking head with the power of friendship.
Yep. The power of friendship overturns Egyptian gods, all right? The power of friendship is the most powerful thing that could possibly exist.
I have a friendship concussion from this movie.
A friend cushion.
It hit me. It like beat me over the head so hard with the fact that we're friends and nothing's gonna stand in our way. And then, oh no, something's standing in our way. Good thing we're friends. Like, what?
You just got hit with the gum concussion.
Gum concussion made of friendship.
Yeah, I did anyone else realize? I think Yugi's grandpa is literally just Yugi's face with age lines, and I think that's what makes it kind of scary. Is because it's like a children's face with age lines.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
And that's so different from the show itself, because I was just waiting for the moment where Yugi for Yugi's alter ego, for anybody that might be confused, and Nate, I think you're one of those. His alter ego, the spirit that's inside him, his name is Yami.
Yeah. He was also an old ancient pharaoh.
Yeah, he's an old ancient pharaoh. Surprise, Nate.
It's fine,
but
I'm not reading this.
Yeah, but like, I was waiting for the point where like I could see like when he turned into Yami, like I could understand what was going on because I had that context. But the biggest problem I had with that is that he didn't grow 3 inches taller when.
Yeah, he does that in the show. He grows 3 inches taller, and you hear his voice get deeper. And stop right there, Kaiba. Like,
yeah, like that's exactly how I read it in my mind. It was like I was just waiting for him to say "mind break." And,
it took a while for them to figure out, or for me to figure out, in the context of just the manga, that he had been taken over by a different soul. Like, it took him a long time to explore that.
It's real easy to see. It's he has no angry eyes, and then when he changes, he has angry eyes.
But he doesn't really explain what happens.
Yeah, they don't really explain it. In the beginning, he has a third eye. The eye that's on the Millennium Puzzle is on his forehead. But then after a couple chapters, he stops having that. So you're just supposed to guess.
He gets tired of drawing it.
Yeah, it's like in Dragon Ball where like Super Saiyan becomes not so much of a cool thing anymore, and it's just like he's just like sneezes and like threat Super Saiyan go, and he does that
killing game go.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, I've been offended. Yami, come.
Yeah. It's. I don't know. It is weird. I had another point about just how like these are all very twisted versions of the characters I knew. Like Kaiba, the Kaiba brothers are twisted, bro. Like they are way more twisted than they were.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like everyone hated Seto Kaiba in the show because he tore up the Blue Eyes White Dragon. And like he's despicable and all this stuff. This one he's straight up just like kidnaps his grandpa, beats him in a duel, rips up his fucking Blue Eyes White Dragon, and then leaves him in a virtual reality chamber with live monsters to, quote, experience death. And he goes, we ran human experiments. He only has 30 minutes till he goes insane. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And then Mokuba kidnaps Joichi and Yugi and is like, oh, I'll feed you guys, don't worry. And then it's just like, oh, by the way, this is all poison. Have fun. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Mokuba, and kind of what I was getting at earlier is like Mokuba is not nearly that evil in the show.
He's the only nice character in the show. Like, he likes Yugi and thinks Yugi's cool in the show. Seto hates Yugi, and they butt heads about it frequently.
Yeah.
That's their conflict.
Yeah. Mokuba is like, I mean, he's seriously like a manga anime Chucky in this show. Like,
yeah.
It's like he's constantly trying to kill anybody.
In the manga?
Yeah, anybody. Doesn't have to be Yugi. Yeah, in the manga.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll mess that up time to time.
Yeah, it's twisted. But again, the only other version of these characters I've ever known is the 4Kids dub. So it's probably a bad comparison to be like, wow, these are fucked up characters. But let me try and get the show out of my mind for a second. None of these characters are endearing.
No.
Like I don't feel attached to any of them. I know I'm supposed to, but I don't.
The only one that had anything that I like had any understanding to was Anzu that was like, I have to get a job. And I was like, yeah, I get it. It's tough, girl. And then...
even though that wasn't allowed.
Yeah, it wasn't... Yeah, she's like, I don't want to get expelled. I was like, what? Okay.
Which I can relate to. I mean, it's at least working for the U.S. government. It's very frowned upon to have a second job, and I can't imagine that in high school. Which I had a job in high school, so I don't exactly know. But yeah, I mean, you get looked down upon for having another job. Like, what, is this not good enough for you? Is being in high school not good enough for you? How dare you? And then they automatically assumed that she was a slut.
I think that was just Joichi being Joichi, though, because he's like that.
Kind of a weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a weirdo. But so is Yugi. Remember, like, in the first chapter, he's, like, building his puzzle, and Anzu comes up and is like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, oh, nothing. Hey, wait, weren't you playing basketball? She goes, I was, but everyone kept trying to look up our skirts. And then immediately Yugi just pictures it. And I'm just like, oh, God damn it.
Well, they are also high schoolers, so...
Yeah, I know, but it's like...
It's pretty shoehorned.
It is.
It's pretty shoehorned, right? This isn't... Like, Yugi's... This is a Shonen Jump manga, by the way. Shonen characters have no sexuality. Like, that's just... Shonen protagonists have no sexuality. And you instantly gave one to a fucking tiny-ass high schooler.
Yeah. And I like to see the comparison between, like, the animation and the manga. But, like, there was definitely a lot more... for better or worse, like, it seemed like between Yugi and what's her name, Anzu slash Taya, there was a lot more, like, sexual tension going on in there.
You're right.
There really was. Like, she was at one point. She was like, it seemed like she was hinting at like them two having a thing, and like, it was very underwhelming what it was.
Well, that was until she heard the voice of Yugi's alter ego and fell in love with
it. Oh,
it.
yeah, she fell in love with that, and then that was a whole thing, which does kind of show itself in the anime from what I remember. But, I mean, it was just... it's just another... Just like the rest of this series, it's like a series of things that are happening. Like, oh, there's sexual tension going on here. Oh, somebody offended me. Let me kill them.
I agree.
Somebody hurt Joey. Let me murder
I mean, the tension feels a lot more like an undertone of an undertone. It's not even like directly affecting anything.
When I was reading this, I honestly thought that at one point it was going to go, okay, all these kids have to make this trip to Egypt, and we're going to find out about all these different Millennium artifacts or something. I like, the whole games thing was kind of getting like, okay, the other Egyptian dude does a really crazy game. Imagine what they could get into in another country. But it never went there. It just went like kids being annoying.
Yeah, kids being annoying. And in the show, dude, they do. Like, there's a quest to hunt down all the Millennium artifacts in the show. Pegasus has the Millennium Eye. Another dude has the Millennium Scepter. Another dude has the Scales. Another dude has the Key. And it's like, then the puzzle, and they all come. There's 7 of them. I know there's 7 of them. And they all come together at one point. And if you wield them all, you become
Exodia.
Like a god, basically. Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's a card that doesn't even appear in this manga. That is in the show. Like, in the show, Yugi wins his first duel with Seto Kaiba by playing Exodia. In the manga, it's because Blue Eyes White Dragon decides Kaiba's a bitch and doesn't want to listen to him.
I thought that was very funny. I was like,
that was one of the best parts.
Let's touch on the children's card game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And the rules that are portrayed in the show and the manga itself.
Bro, I did not read the rules in the manga. I did not.
You didn't need to read the rules. Just remember how they fucking played. Like, there's nothing. There's no rules going on there. It's very specific in like the actual card game, and then in the show, like the early days of the show, it's like, yeah, anything goes. Just like put down a card, and that's what you got. Right. And it was almost worse in this.
You're just throwing down level 7 monsters without any recourse. Just I drew this card. Time to play it. I was
laughing pretty hard whenever Kaiba had all of those. The Blue Eyes White Dragons, and he just knew all that the next 3, and he just picks them all and plays them all. I was like, I've played a couple card games. There's no freaking way.
Yeah, you can't do that. And I don't want to I just kind of want to right the ship a little bit here, and I'm not saying you guys aren't right, but remember, this came out before the card game was ever a thing.
Oh yeah,
like the rules for the card game were made long after, at least 4 years after this manga came out. So you can't really look at it and go, they don't even follow their own rules, because there were none yet. All they know is that you start with 2,000 life points and you get 40 cards in your deck. Those are the only explicit ones that they say constantly. I think they had a whole chart laid out, but
that they did.
Yeah, I didn't read it, so I guess maybe I'm wrong.
But that right there supports the whole point that this manga could have been good if the card game was just a simple thing that happened at one point.
Yeah.
If the card game wasn't the running theme of the entire series, and we've already said, in these first 29 chapters, it wasn't. But there was not really any forethought that goes into it, and maybe we're just thinking in a different manner because we know what the card game is like, and we know what card games are like generally. But if the whole point of this manga was not the children's card game, it would have been okay on its own. Yeah, there was some problems with the story. There was some narrative issues, but in its core, it could have been really, really interesting if it stayed away from what we know about Yu-Gi-Oh today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it never even touched Duel Monsters in this manga, I think it would have been a little bit more exciting. Like you said, John, if we took away the name Yu-Gi-Oh and said, okay, there's this high schooler who uncovers a secret agent mystery, gets an alter ego that plays games with people, which just ultimately ends up either killing them or ruining their lives in some way, hence the Mosaic guy. And it's a monster of the week kind of format where it's a sitcom, so nothing's really ever going to stick. I'd be like, okay, I could get behind that. But then you attach the name Yu-Gi-Oh to it, and I go, where are the cards? Why are we talking about anything but that?
When I try to think about it without any perspective of the card game or the anime, I have to agree that it just feels like a shitty sitcom.
Yeah,
without trying to overbear the card the card game aspect of the introduction. Because if I'm teleport back to '96 when this first came out, and the card game doesn't exist and the anime doesn't exist, and you just read this, I would just put it down after the first book or two, because it's just, and there was no hook. There wasn't a whole lot that got me invested in the characters. It just kind of was, it fell pretty flat in my opinion.
Yeah,
I would say real quick, I would just say people like us, older guys who, some of us grew up with the show, or we all grew up with the card game. 2000, I don't know how old you guys were in 2000, but I was 6.
5.
So
yep, I was the exact same age as you, funny enough.
But what am I trying to say? Oh, so we don't know this manga exists, right? I didn't know this manga existed until at least 2 years ago. And I read a little bit of it back then, but, now I'm actually, paying attention and reading it. Either way, I'm reading it because it's called Yu-Gi-Oh! And I remember the show and card game and want to see what that was like. I guess it's wrong for me to say that this was bad because it didn't deliver, because it came out before all that. But at the same time, call it something else. Yeah, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Parentheses, not the one you're thinking of. It's gotta be something like that, because otherwise guys like us who are in our 20s and 30s, I guess,
I guess,
are gonna go. You're not in your 30s. You are 30.
For all the fans wondering, I'm not 30.
But like, you know, there needs to be a disclaimer because we're, you know, people our age who are nostalgic for the card game or the show are gonna, like, if they read manga, they're gonna go back and they're gonna be like, oh, the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, I want to see where it all started, and they're gonna get through it and they're gonna be like, what the fuck?
I wasn't even nostalgic. I actually wasn't really that, like, I was like, okay, I'll pick this up like I haven't known anything because I barely know anything.
Right, yeah, you're the exception out of this group.
Oh, you know what? I have seen one piece of media. I forgot that they had a movie that you got a free card with the movie. I went to see the movie as a kid. I guess I have seen the movie.
There was a lot of movies.
Was there? See, I don't even know. I went because my friend did it for his birthday. But I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I know which movie you're talking about because I also got the same movie and it came with.
Oh, big man's got 4 cards. You gonna play all those at once?
Yeah, because they're the Magnet Warriors, and then I can fucking fuse them and get Alpha Omega the Magnet Warrior. And, not even kidding.
And that's the beginning of when the card game got way too in depth.
Oh, fusion?
Yeah, when we started getting into that territory.
Well, there was always fusion. Remember Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon?
Yeah, but then it became a mainstay. Like, it was just a staple. Like, yeah, we can do this fusion stuff. And then...
against certain monsters.
And then it just became a normal thing. And then the whole card game got way too complex for me to understand. But what do I know? I'm a fucking old guy.
Dude, if it wasn't Yugi or Kaiba's deck, I didn't know how to play it. Like Joey's deck, when you had to have Time Wizard for Baby Dragon to turn to the 1,000-year dragon, and I'm like, that's too complicated.
And Time Wizard sucks, so as soon as you summon him, he just dies.
Yeah, exactly.
All of this is going right over my head. Bunch of nerds.
Sorry, but it's amazing he was able to pull it off in the show because everybody in that show was fucking stupid. It's like, I'm just going to let him do whatever. It's like Dragon Ball. It's a Dragon Ball problem. It's like, do we let our enemy do whatever they want and then try to stop them? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was really funny that, like, every single little game that was in the, like how we had those capsule monsters, the Tamagotchis, and even the Duel Monster thing, every time he prefaced it with, well, this is super popular in America. And I was just like, man, he was really trying to throw that out there.
Yeah. Well, and Duel Monsters stuck, at least.
Yeah, it damn sure did.
For Duncan and John, when they started talking about capsule monsters in the manga, did you guys immediately think of dice monsters?
I actually, so when that was coming up, I did think it was going to be dungeon dice monsters.
The dungeon dice
that's exactly what I thought it was going to be, and then it was like capsule monsters, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is Pokemon.
It's basically Pokemon, except you don't know what Pokemon you have until you open it.
Yeah, this is like Yu-Gi-Oh, but on a board. Then, I mean, I was, at that point, I was just focused on how insane Mokuba looked. Like,
Mokuba was pretty.
I was just like, this kid is going to kill a lot of people.
Yeah. If he's not stopped, and he is stopped there for a moment, Yugi does poison him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
well, he poisons himself.
Yeah, that was just odd entirely.
I agree.
So all right. I mean, I asked one question and we went on like 30 minutes of ramble. So for the listener,
let's see what the other question is.
For the listener, I think you understand where we stand on this at this point. But I'm going to ask 2 more questions to just see if we can redeem this thing and see where we go from there. Because, wow. I mean, I'm still just like, I have like sensory overload of how frustrated I was reading this thing. But
let's not beat the dead horse too hard.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, this horse is just in the ground. Yeah. Okay, so
for months.
It's been dead for months, and we're still beating it. So okay,
another dead horse.
I just want to like put a value on whatever it is for all of you, but like for each of you, like what was the most, whether it's a comparison to the anime adaptation or just reading it for the first time, what was the most jarring thing in all of these 29 chapters that you read? That like for you were like, holy shit, what's going on? Or like, yeah, maybe that was kind of cool.
Definitely the guy getting lit on fire in the burger joint. That was pretty heavy.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Duncan, I hate to have the same opinion, but that's exactly what I was coming with. Like, I mean, that was like the first point where I was like, oh, geez, people die regularly here.
And like on screen, the whole panel, like I said earlier, that whole panel is just a dude on fire dying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll take that.
I think having I also agree with that one, but I think seeing the I can't remember the god's name that is in the form of an alligator, but where it just ate that dude.
Yeah,
that was
but on the news it reported as like died of a heart attack.
Yeah, something. But it was like super detailed. It felt so much more detailed than, because like the alligator held onto his arms and then bit him on the head. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. It was the most detailed drawn thing in the entire thing, especially when you consider sometimes Yugi is just drawn without a nose.
Okay, I take back my answer. Yeah, that was the first thing that I noticed. I was like, where's his nose?
The first thing that really jarred me out of like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be, was the first time Yugi changed into Yami. Well, we know him as Yami, but the other Yugi. And even though I know from the show like he's supposed to sound deeper and everything, because he wasn't drawn any different other than with angry eyebrows, it just sounded like, in my head while I was reading it, other Yugi's voice was just a freshman goth. Like, nobody understands me, Mom. Let's play a game. Like, I just don't. Yeah, I was like, God, he's just a kid throwing a temper tantrum is what it looks like. Like, I know there's a spirit possessing him and it's a whole thing, but like, he literally just looks like an angry teenager.
It's funny. That's actually how I heard the voice too. Was just like a kid, but just deeper. Like,
yeah, like, you don't understand me, Mom. Let's play a game.
And that's probably how it was intended to be. Like, I'm sure for the anime adaptation, like, you know, they had to change the character visually and audibly.
I was going to say, visually, his hair, he does actually go Super Saiyan, because his regular Yugi's hair kind of droops down in front of his eyes, and then when he goes Yami, it kind of stands up, and you get that fire-looking stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, that was the most jarring thing for me, was just like, I can't even take him seriously when he does change into this supposed powerful being, because he doesn't look any different.
No, it was just like a crazier Yugi. Like, he had like the crazy eyes going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like, I knew what I wanted him to sound like in that, but at that point, like, he could have still had the same like snot-nosed kid voice. And like, he was just really, really like cocky with it. I mean, I don't know what the author's name is, Takahashi, but like, I don't know what he was thinking at that point.
I just had a wave of realization. I blocked an entire chapter from my mind.
Oh, no.
That I just remembered somehow while you were talking about it. Remember when the guy keeps him all night to sing to him?
Oh my god, yeah.
Yes.
I just blocked it from my mind, but he plays a game with that guy for no other reason other than he inconvenienced him and was like, I'm sure he threatened him in some way, but it was just like, you have to stay here and listen to me sing badly. And he's like, nope, killing you.
Yeah, I mean,
it
was an inconvenience, because at that point, like, bullies weren't a problem, but like, he was just, he said, like, you need to sell these tickets for me because we're buds, right? And you know what'll happen if you don't sell these tickets. And
It's like, I'll beat you up. Like, okay.
Yeah, it was.
I get beat up every day. Fuck you.
Another day in the life in high school.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was like anyone that just inconvenienced or bullied him, he was like, well, this person has a terrible soul. It is time to kill them.
Yeah, like
I want to play a game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, this. As far as we know, this was a manga adaptation of Saw.
Yeah, that's I can see that
a little bit. You know what? I mean, he does say those exact words basically every chapter.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, like it is a darker version of what we saw in the show. It just, I think, in all of our opinions, it just didn't work. Maybe if we read it without the context of the manga, I mean, without the context of the anime, but like even in Nate's case, never watched the anime. He just it just didn't work.
It didn't click. It just didn't click at all.
Which leads me to my final question. I had a few more, but we've explored everything at this point. So where did it go wrong? Like the author Takahashi, like what could he have done to make it a good manga here? Because I think we're all in agreement. Like it's not a good manga.
No, and I want to try and stay away from the fact of like he should have used more dual monster. Again, you got to try and remember that wasn't a thing yet. Show didn't exist. Card game didn't exist. What made this a bad manga for me right away was I don't give a shit about the main character. Like Yugi, I don't relate to Yugi at all. He's a wimpy, whiny little kid who secludes himself away with games. Like I get the seclusion part, like I get that, but seriously, the kid just doesn't. I don't know. I get it. There are these kids out there, and God love them. They're bullied. They shouldn't be. Blah blah blah. But like, he has no relatable characteristics. He just doesn't. At least for me, that was it. I just make me care about your main character, other than the fact that you told me they're the main character. That seems to be the only reason we're supposed to care about Yugi is because we know he's the main character,
and he's got protagonist hair.
He's got the protag hair.
He does. Everybody else has pretty normal hair.
Exactly.
But like, the name of the manga is Yu-Gi-Oh. So obviously we meet Yu-Gi-Moto. He's our main character. Why do I love him? And I never get that. I never get here's why you should care about this kid. I don't. So that's, I think, could have been better for me. Is just better characters. Or at least a better protagonist.
For me, I think the storytelling could have been a little bit better. And like we've already hit this horse so many times, it's basically like a mush. The sitcom format didn't sit well with me in the manga as a manga. And there's just like no depth to any of the characters, really. It just didn't go anywhere, really.
Yeah, I think I have to compound both ideas in saying, let's just say we had this protagonist, Yu-Gi-Oh, and then you can tell his grandfather owns this store, he's good with these games. Okay, what if something happened to the grandfather, right? And then, say the grandfather passes away, and then he builds the Millennium Puzzle, and then he finds out about all this Egyptian stuff because of the connections with his grandfather, and then they like build on all of these Millennium items. That would sound so cool as an anime, because
I agree.
You almost just described the
really
anime.
So I haven't seen it.
Basically, actually.
Almost, because something does happen to the grandfather in the anime, which is kind of the crux of the whole thing.
I didn't know that. No,
yeah, like he builds the puzzle before, but then after he builds the puzzle, something happens to either his grandpa or his grandpa's property, and that.
All right, I'm glad somebody was listening.
20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Glad someone listened to me 20 years ago. But no, like I 100% agree. If it were that, and again, trying not the anime's plot, but the plot you just described, where it turns out his grandpa lived this whole secret life of an Egyptian plunderer.
Yeah,
that would be so much cooler.
And then, like after the death of the grandfather, then like we get something with the protagonist that just makes him like grow up and not be such a wimpy kid.
Let's just say, like, he doesn't immediately know what shadow games are. He doesn't even know he could tap into the Millennium Puzzle yet, and has to go to Egypt and learn all these. I don't know. You're right, though. You're 100% on board there. John, where did it go wrong for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, with all the context I have, and I mean, everything that I know with the show, I mean, that obviously poses some issues. But, I mean, like, the storytelling, like, I'm going to kind of jump on, like, Duncan's opinion on here. Like, the storytelling was just bad. Like, I tried to, like, put my mind into that of someone who's reading it for the first time. Somebody back in 1997 who, I don't know, like, it saw it at a Barnes & Noble or, like, online or however it was distributed back then. But, like, there's no progression. Like, and I'm sure if we give it more time, I'm sure there's some sort of progression. But, like, I don't think the basis of this show or this manga should have been anything to do with a card game. It could have so easily gone into a direction where, like, all right, we have some spiritual implications that come from the ancient Egyptians. There's so much that they could have done with this aside from the marketing aspect of making a card game out of it. Like, if the two existed separately, Yu-Gi-Oh, the children's card game, and Yu-Gi-Oh, the death show of spiritual games, like
Yu-Gi-Oh, but not that one.
yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh, but not that one. Like, it could have been so good. Like, if they could have focused less on the life of high schoolers and also card games sometimes, and focus more on like this kid is now ingrained, possessed by a Egyptian pharaoh, which we know that because we have context beyond what we read. But, like, he's possessed by an Egyptian pharaoh and his soul, like, they've intertwined at this point. They could have gone in such a crazy good direction. And we've made a lot of JoJo references at this point. Like, I mean, JoJo obviously went, like, an entirely different direction with the way that story went. But, like, I mean, just the time that they spent with, like, ancient relics and ancient beings in that show, like, they did it right in that show. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh did. Like, if the anime never came out, the card game never came out, this manga, I don't think it would have survived longer than it actually did.
Yeah, it probably would have been buried and forgotten.
Entirely. Honestly, I don't know who reads it. And if you're one of those out there that reads it, sorry, but I don't share your enthusiasm.
Don't like it.
I would love to hear from somebody who genuinely enjoys the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga and hear their thoughts.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Thank God for the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's some fucking genius at marketing wherever, like, whatever toy company developed the card game, some genius from that company saw that one chapter of Duel Monsters and went, we have a product. Like, thank God for that person if I'm the artist and author of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because if it weren't for that person, exactly like John said, this manga never would have made it as far. We wouldn't be reading it today because we wouldn't know it exists.
Yeah, frankly, I mean, if I was just put me in the seat of, like, buying some manga, just, like, picking up some new, like how I used to pick up comic books just to read random ones. If this one, like, caught my eye, probably would have dropped it after 3 chapters.
I have a question. What was everybody's favorite part?
Ooh. Mine was definitely when they were, like, battling on the rooftop and Anzu was going to fall and then Jonoichi was being chased by a zombie. And I was like, okay, this is getting pretty in-depth here. I kind of like this.
Mm-hmm. My favorite part was probably, and it's going to be kind of a false premise, but when they get to Kaiba Land, towards the end of our readings, Kaiba builds the first indoor amusement park or whatever, and then he has a special dueling arena for duel monsters, and I'm like, finally, here we go. And then he just beats the shit out of Yugi's grandpa, and then puts him in the laser tag, and I'm like, fuck.
Oh my god! Yeah, the laser tag.
That was so frustrating.
The laser tag.
Like, yes, we're gonna get a duel monsters tournament. Nope, it's laser tag now. Fuck. All right. So that Duel Monsters Arena, that fleeting moment, I was like, yes, this is my favorite part because we're going to get some here. And no, it doesn't happen. But that fleeting moment of hope, I was like, yes, no.
Yeah, it's tough for me to come up with a favorite part because, I mean, like, all things considered, there were parts that I enjoyed and most parts I didn't enjoy. I think... And it's not a specific part, but I think the times where I enjoyed it the most was the anticipation for the card game to kind of come into play. And I know that's contrary to what I've said so far, but like that was the basis that most of us have going into this manga. Like just waiting for when does the card game come into play. And seeing all the duels take place, honestly, it was just leading up to those moments where like they start talking about the cards and like, you know, like how popular it is and like it in retrospect it was underwhelming because, you know, at this point it was just like a thing. This is a card game that a lot of people play, and some people are really good at it. But like knowing the potential that could come from it, like in the show where the card game is tightly related to an ancient game that the Egyptians used to play with monsters and all that. Like that's kind of what I was waiting on, and it just never happened. So like my favorite part was honestly like the anticipation, waiting on that to happen, and it just maybe it happens in the future, but it just didn't. But that was when I was excited. That was when I was really like enthusiastic, and I was just let down pretty much every time.
Makes sense. My favorite part was during the chapter where they were doing the fair, I don't know, like the school fair, and they had to set up those the circus games or fair games.
Yeah.
There was
the fair games.
There was one single panel where Joichi and Honda have this big piece of wood, and they use it to lift up Anza's skirt, and they go like, panty tank! And then that one panel made me laugh so hard. It's just the way that it's drawn, and it just is out of nowhere.
Yeah,
there's nothing leading up to it except for the fact that they're using building materials. And that just killed me.
I take it back. My favorite part was at the end or beginning, I can't remember where, of every chapter where Anzu becomes more... what's the word?
Yeah.
Where it starts becoming more suggestive every time, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's pretty attractive.
Oh, like the cover art, or
yeah, I don't know if it was like the cover art, but like it seemed like they were hinting towards some like, I don't know, some like very sexual stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Suggestive
I don't know.
themes, yeah.
I actually, so I was planning on making a joke out of that, but I mean, like, it
really worked out.
Yeah, it really did work out. No, but like, yeah, I know. No, but like that was, I did notice that as it was going about, like, as Anzu became more of an important character, it kept on. It seemed like it was getting more suggestive as it went on.
That's the kind of character growth I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a character growth. No, in all reality, that was one thing I noticed. But yeah, definitely back to my first point. It was just another thing.
It's just a thing we
Just a
reread.
thing.
We read it so you don't have to, unless you read it along with us. In which case, sorry about that.
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
We'll make recommendations from time to time, and you can choose to follow along with us or take your medicine and don't.
You
but
have to
that's
bond
up
with
you.
us through trauma.
Yes.
I feel closer to all of you already.
Oh my god. Me too. Well, I think we've beaten this dead horse with as many dead horses as we could find. What do you say, fellas?
Wait, let me get a couple more
I
waxes.
think so.
So, all right. We
All
reading
right.
any more of this?
On the... Yeah, I was going to say, let's take a vote. Who wants to read more? Say aye. That's what I thought. All right. Hey! So, there's only 59 chapters in total. We made it to chapters 29. If you're really that curious, chapters 30 through 59 might show us some answers that our complaints were about. If not, maybe we're not missing anything. So,
Yeah, I mean, this far, 30 chapters is a lot. If you haven't got us hooked by then...
I don't... Yeah, I'm not... I don't want to read 30 more chapters of this. I am so done. I'm so done.
And I mean, so let me just go ahead and say right now, like, I mean, we do care about our listener base, like, however big or small it is. If you guys have a different opinion, whether you think we should continue or not continue, maybe we'll come back and pick it up again.
Give us a reasonable argument, not just you guys missed the best part. Like, that's not gonna
Yeah,
convince
like
anybody.
give us a reason to come back, and this will be a thing throughout all the other mangas that we go through as we do this podcast. But if you have differing opinions and you think we made a grievous mistake of not continuing to read this manga, let us know. You can send all your complaints or comments.
We'll figure out how to get complaints and comments somewhere.
I already have it.
Somehow. Oh, never mind. You did.
Yeah. All right. So you can send all your complaints or comments or recommendations to that one time I read manga at gmail.com, and we'll take a look through and we'll consider your opinions. All the opinions we will appreciate.
The companions, the conspiracy.
The companions. We'll consider all your fuck.
Yeah. Anyway, does anybody have a recommendation for what to read next time? So next week we're gonna jump back into One Piece. That's gonna be our long-standing guy. But does anybody right now have a recommendation? If not, I did find something that's kind of short and might be enjoyable.
I think Duncan is up next, but if he doesn't have anything, I'm all ears.
I've looked into a couple things, but they're not on Viz. So that might be something that we just discuss in post.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Tim, what do you got?
So on Viz, I found a little manga. It's only 30 chapters long. It's called Phantom Seer. I've never heard of it. I have no idea what it is. I just looked for the shortest manga I could find, and Phantom Seer came up. It's only 30 chapters. So
Interesting.
if we want to do, do you guys think you could do all 30 in 2 weeks when we come back?
Yeah.
I think so.
On top of the One Piece chapters we have to read.
Yeah.
I think that's doable.
I agree.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Our next chunk after our next One Piece chunk is going to be Phantom Seer. All of it, chapters 1 through 30. Don't know if this is ongoing or not. Like I said, I've never heard of this. I have no idea what it is. But it would put us all on equal ground, and hopefully it's a decent one. It's ghostly. That's all I know. It's got
I like
ghosts
that.
in it.
We like ghosts.
Yeah.
I like ghosts.
We like ghosts. So, all right, fellas, thank you all so much for experiencing this trauma with me. If you read along at home, thank you for experiencing this trauma with us. And until next time, everyone, enjoy reading Phantom Seer, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.